Welcome everybody to our introduction to Portfolio 2.x for JIRA. My name is Michael McNeil, principal here at Expium, and I've been using Portfolio now ever since it came out in its first iteration. This is a 1 hour, probably close to 1 hour introduction to Portfolio. Later this week on Thursday, we have an advanced Portfolio class. It's a 4-hour class. It's fairly inexpensive, and you can find more information out at our website. So about us, Expium, we're an Atlassian partner. We have been for some time. We offer 3 main avenues of support for our clients. We have training. We offer extensive training. We're the folks behind the JIRA Bootcamp that's been a popular class for many years. We also have training on many of the other packages. We're probably one of the only partners that can train on automated testing and issues around Bitbucket and Bamboo. And also we do extensive consulting with some mostly large enterprises where we focus on integration of many teams across many products and projects. And that leads to the expertise in Portfolio, which is what we're talking about today. We also have the ability to do custom development. We had, for example, a client come to us at the Atlassian Summit and ask us for a price to build an add-on. We simply built it and put it in the marketplace, and they're using it today, and it's available for purchase. We have a full staff of software developers that can build custom integrations, custom add-ons, and do many complex things with our enterprise clients instances. We also do offer products via the Atlassian Marketplace. So our agenda for today, I'm going to go through kind of the backstory on Portfolio. It's important to understand some of the ways these products from Atlassian come about. It allows you to avoid some major pitfalls, because sometimes we can make assumptions based on the title of a product or the identity of a product and end up creating situations where we have to start over from scratch down the line. I'll be going over some important concepts related to Portfolio for JIRA. I'll be doing a live demonstration. We've got multiple plans. They range from single team, single project, multi-team, multi-project, corporate initiatives, and straight hardcore project management. So we'll be getting into those in much more detail on Thursday, but I'll be running through some of those here today. And then after that, we'll be able to take some of your questions, and Brian will be helping me with that as we move along. So the backstory on Portfolio. It's really important. The Portfolio's development came from, it is very similar in some ways to JIRA Service Desk. There were a lot of needs related to dealing with multiple Agile teams and the implementation of scaled Agile and the SAFe framework within JIRA. So there were a lot of cobbled together solutions for that. The Atlassian team took notice, and like they did for the Agile add-on that used to be Greenhopper in JIRA itself and JIRA Service Desk, they took on the needs of their customer base, and they built version 1.x. Version 1.x had some serious problems. It was their first attempt at a very complex visualization, but there was a real problem with adoption, because it would only really work if you implemented Agile the exact way that Atlassian does. And that's often a problem, because when we go into organizations, if I talk to 100 different companies, there are 100 different flavors of Agile that are being implemented there. So there's very little overlap when you look at the broad spectrum of the Atlassian customer base and the way they use Agile. So there were some problems there that kept it from being successful for customers. And so they took that to heart, and they actually did a complete rewrite and a complete reboot with Portfolio for JIRA 2.0. It came out last fall. We did a demo video that's been very popular on YouTube for that initial version. From the initial version, it was very usable. It was a much better attempt, a much better approach, and works very well, not just for software teams, but for all teams. We're currently on version 2.8, And there are some features that I'm going to have to get familiar with that just came out last week while I was overseas for this upcoming class on Thursday. So that's some of the background. There's some important concepts going into when you start thinking about JIRA Portfolio. Number one, there's an unlimited hierarchy. So the current issue type hierarchy that's available in JIRA is simply task and subtask. And you can't have subtasks of subtasks. So it's a two-level hierarchy. And you can have a quasi hierarchy in the agile world with epic and story and then task and then subtask, but it's not a very clean arrangement. With Portfolio, they fixed that. And you can actually go in and you can adjust your issue type hierarchy to be whatever you want. You can actually go through and assign particular issue types and create a 7-level hierarchy. For example, you might have a corporate initiative that leads to epics and stories and then tasks, or you might have major epics. You might have a number of mechanisms that you use to organize your work and in your organization. These are now adjustable. It is my belief that this unlimited hierarchy is going to make its way back into JIRA, just like some of the other ideas you see here on the screen. So themes is another one. A good way to think about themes, and we will look at this on screen here in just a little bit. A good way to think about it is that it's about identifying how your work applies to something larger. So it could be a corporate theme. Say we have a theme that we want the majority of our effort to be about our customer success. And so you take a look and you assign epics to customer success. And so you know that this all of the work that goes into this is related to customer success. And then other themes that might be related are operations or internal support or marketing. And so you can track what kind of big buckets your work is assigned to. This theme field is, and it is a field in the database, is exposed back in JIRA. And I expect that at any time, and it could be currently, I just haven't looked at deeply at the latest version. But for right now, we're recommending to our clients that these themes and the other fields that are available in Portfolio that are being exposed in JIRA only be edited within Portfolio. And we'll go over that a little bit more. There's also the idea of teams. So you can create teams of people that are working on particular groups of issues. And we'll be looking at that as we go through. You can be a member of multiple teams. You can share teams. Think of it much like you share other aspects of JIRA. And then there's the idea of stages. So there can be an automated assignment of, well, 10% of the work that goes into our issues is in preliminary documentation and design. And then 75% of the work is the development work. And then 10% of the work is testing. And then the last 5% is final documentation and deployment. You can have these stages of an issue's life cycle pre-identified. And this really helps with projections and with some of the ideas in Portfolio around future scheduling and scenario planning, and we'll be looking at that in a moment as well. And then we have skills, and here the idea is that within your teams, you can have different skills. One, I'm going to use continue to use software development as an example here, although Portfolio applies to many other industries. But skills are, you might have some of your developers that are back-end developers and you have database skills. Other developers are really strong with automated testing and front-end development, or others could be focused solely on scripting. There are a number of skills that can be created, and these are really important when you start talking about scheduling and planning, because you need to have the right skills available to execute the work, and that's an important concept. So all of these are really fundamental to using Portfolio. And now I'm going to jump in here and we'll take a look at portfolio itself. So where I'm at right now is I'm at an initial plan, and this is and a plan is what you create in portfolio. And I'll take you through that process real quickly here. So if I create a plan, the idea is that you're going to create something that you're going to look at, and it's a subset of issues within JIRA. So we'll create a demo plan. And here I can select how do I identify the issues, or what is the scope of the work. So, so it can be, so typically we'll want to use a filter or a project. Some people, if you have a particular team that wants to use portfolio for planning, you can bring in issues directly off of a board. But as we look at this at the enterprise level, we're typically looking at projects or filters here. And there is an assumption here that a filter is a query of the JIRA database that gives you a list of issues. A project is the organizing principle in JIRA for working on a particular group of issues towards a selected goal. And then the board is an agile board concept within JIRA, a Kanban board or a Scrum board, where you're actually tracking the work across a sprint or ongoing using the Kanban board. So here I'm just going to select a project. I can select from one of my various projects. I'm going to go ahead and pick one here. I can select my type of estimation. Here I'm just going to leave it at days, and you pop through. You get the opportunity to select relevant releases for release planning purposes. So here I'm going to go ahead and select these. And I can also select my team. Here I've got a team that's already been assigned to this. And now I get to take a look at what just happened. Okay, so I picked a project. Here were the issues. I can deselect issues here if I want. So there's just a few issues, obviously, in this project that I selected. There's a lot more in the ones we're going to look at in a moment. And I can choose, and I can start to establish what is the scope that's going to be included in this plan. And so those are concepts that you're going to hear time and time again, and you'll see them in Portfolio's documentation. If I click done, then it should drop me into an automatically created plan. And let me give you a quick orientation before we go to the more complex ones. One important concept to understand within Portfolio is there are multiple places to configure Portfolio. And this can be very confusing. This has improved in some of the latest versions, especially with the new JIRA UI. But here you have this ellipses next to the title of this plan, which I labeled as demo. If I click on this, I don't want to delete my plan, but I can go into a configuration screen here that we'll look at in depth on Thursday. Then also over here on the right, I have a gear icon where I can select and I can change settings for this schedule. And then down here for this lower pane, I have another settings. So understand that you may or may not be able to get to everything that you want to get to from this initial configure screen, although this is quite improved, because now instead of in previous versions there were 5 places to change settings, and now we are down to 3 here on the screen. There are some administrative settings back here under settings, but we're not going to go into those for this because only a few of you will actually have access. So you'll notice something somewhat familiar here. You have the drop down, much like you have on your view all issues screen within JIRA, where you can do some filtering. This is much the same. So here I can pick what level am I looking at in this particular plan. Am I looking at the stories or epics? That'll come into play more in some of the other plans I'm going to show you here in a little bit. Also, I can adjust. If I have multiple projects in this plan, I can narrow it down. If I have multiple releases in this plan, I can say, okay, I only want to see things that are associated with point 1. And there you see automatically filters things down. I can clear and it goes back. So the filtering here is much like you would expect if you have used JIRA before. And the same thing can be done with teams. So your organizing ideas here are your issue types, and your issue types will be your issue hierarchy that I described at the beginning will be listed here. Then the projects, the releases, and the teams. And this allows you to change what is on this, this main scope screen. So up here on the upper right, I can select which view do I want. And I'm going to describe that. So we've got scope, we've got teams, and we have releases. If you notice, there is a division to the screen. And all that changes when you change this view is the top section, or the bottom, excuse me, the bottom section. And this is, in this view, we're seeing the actual scope of issues, very similar to the when we're configuring our plan. And then we can also see our teams. And so here we can see our the actual team associated with this, which has obviously not been configured yet, but you can configure it here. And then releases, which shows what releases are available in this plan. So this is there is a continuity here between these two panes, the top one being the schedule, and you can see that identified here, and the bottom one being whatever you have selected across this menu. Now this carries over into what you see in the upper right here, which is reports. Under reports, I can switch and I can actually go look at my schedule. Well, as you note, as you can see here, this is the same view that we were just looking at in the other views, the scope, the team, and the release view. Well, I can also look at schedule, which is, again, the same view. Waiting for it to load. Oh, I see what I did. I was already on schedule. So now I've switched to scope, and that is the same as this scope right here. And the schedule view was the same as the schedule right here. So if I go back and then I go to releases, you'll note that it's the same type of idea that we saw on the releases view here. Except it's only showing the current release. So there's a lot of continuity, is my point, between the reports and the different views on the screen. So let's take a quick look at our plans. Let's take a look at some release planning here for this particular project. And you can see I drop in my schedule view because I was looking at it at the story level. You can see in my schedule view, it's automatically by sprint. Well, if I change that to Epic, now it looks at it from my purely calendar view and the duration and the start and end dates of those particular epics. This can be very valuable because especially when you start dealing with multiple teams, you can start to see your sprint schedule, you can start to see the impact, and especially if you have dependencies between teams. We'll talk about dependencies a little bit here in a moment. So now if I'm looking at my scope view down below, you can see at this story level, I have some of these particular issues, and these are particular issues in JIRA. If I click on one, just like in an Agile board, you can see the details of the item. I can also see this progress bar related to the item, and you can see that that is here as well. So I can, at a quick glance, I can kind of see what's going on with my issues. Now there's an important feature here in the scope view. You'll see this number field, and this is different than many of the other views in JIRA. This is something that's new for Portfolio. And what this is doing is this is setting the priority of these issues. So this is not something you want to mess with a lot. But if, for example, I needed to make sure that, okay, this issue right here, COF 67, is absolutely the highest priority issue. I can bump that to the top, and it is now the #1 issue related to the schedule. And I can see that it's here in sprint 4, recalculate, and it recalculates the schedule based on the change in priority. So this numbering here is the issue priority. It kind of generated based on an algorithm its own assessment of that priority, but you can overwrite it just by dragging and dropping those issues. So there's other features here. You can actually create issues directly from Portfolio. You can modify fields within the issue directly here in Portfolio. And you can also take a look and you can control many of the other fields that you would typically use within JIRA, whether it be labels or components. Click off labels there so you can see it. And so these fields come through directly from the JIRA issues in the JIRA database. There's some other, trying to get to the right spot here. I can create an issue at the right level of the priority if I need to create a new issue right here. So, so obviously I need to edit that because but so you can tell it's created an issue right here. If you'll notice, it does not have an issue number. And this is because changes in Portfolio are somewhat analogous to working with code in Git. So we're making changes here. In this case, I created a new issue. On another one, I think I also changed an issue priority. And you'll notice at the top, there's this lozenge with a 2 in it, and it says 2 uncommitted changes. Now, these changes do not go into JIRA unless I want them to. This can be confusing to new users, but this is a very powerful feature because it allows you to test ideas. So for example, changing the number of members of a team and seeing what the impact is on the schedule. Taking different features off the list of need to do and seeing what that does to the schedule. So you can start to take a scenario kind of view of your work. So in this case, if I go click on review changes, it tells me what those changes were. I updated the priority of this issue, and I also created a new issue. So if I can select which of the items I want to actually have go to the main JIRA instance, and once I do this, then it synchronizes. And once it synchronizes, you can see that where did my testing issues go? There it is. Now if you notice, this item right here actually has its own ID. So it's now COF 158. Until I committed those changes, that did not occur. You can also see that it moved from where I had it, which was number 5, down to 28. That's because JIRA had reasons, our Portfolio had reasons within its algorithm to move the item to that level. Again, that can be confusing. I'm actually thinking that's probably going to change because I put it at number 5 because I wanted it to be number 5. So I actually think that's probably something that, in my opinion, will change. So I'm gonna move it back up here just because I'm that way. I want it to be where I want it to be. So so now the issues are again at the level that I wanted them to be. You can see I made a change, so there's an uncommitted change, and it goes back into JIRA. So that's an important idea and can sometimes be very difficult for people to grasp because it's very possible within Portfolio for you to tell 3 of your project managers, hey, take our list of projects, go work with our staffing levels and see what you can do with our schedule. And as long as they don't have the right or the ability to go and automatically commit those changes, you can actually take a look at the 3 scenarios and these three options that they might come back with, and then decide which one you need to have implemented. This is actually a fairly powerful idea. So now, as I look through this, this is the scope. I'm going to go into real quickly here and take a look at skills and stages. I talked about those as initial concepts. Skills are skills that your team possesses. So we're going to go ahead and start creating some here. So we'll say that we have a specific need for design, and then we have front end, we have back end, and we have database. So if you know, as you can see, there was this automatic allocation of across the percentages of, breaking it automatically into this. Now we know this isn't reality. So I'm going to say we're going to be doing 15% design. We're going to probably be doing, 30% front end work, back end work, 45. Let's see, let's call this that, and then we'll let database pick up the remaining. So this is going to be an automation, an automated estimate allocation of that 15% of an issue's estimated hours or story points or days are going to be related to design. 30% of that estimated time is front end, 30% is back end, and 25% is database. This is the team side of it. Now there's the stages. And so here we have, let's call it design again. We actually have a stage called design. And then we're going to add another stage. You can see the UI is a little different. Development. And we'll add a stage. Testing. And we'll leave it at that. I don't want to take up too much time on this, but as you can note, and we'll go into this more on Thursday, you can see that this is assigning these ideas to design by default. So there is there is a relationship here. We can have different skills associated with different aspects of this. So obviously, for example, we don't want to have, so move to stage, development. And the UI is evolving here. So, and you can begin to see how these kind of how these relationships play into your team skills and the development of an issue. Again, we'll go into more of that detail in our advanced class. So going back to our release planning, that's a quick overview of skills. I wanted to go to teams. Okay, so now we're at our team. And on this particular board, we have, you'll have a list of team members. And now you see, I just created those stages, but I didn't have to do anything. It's automatically here. And I can see that I have my skills inside of these stages. And now I can take my staff members and I can say, okay, George is a designer. Then I can start assigning skills. And we're going to go over the implications of this to the schedule and everything again on Thursday. This is intended to be an overview. But you can start to see there's some very strong features around what is my team capable of, because a lot of planning breaks down if you just assume that there's a number of hours associated with a particular project. It's really impossible to understand the implications unless you have this type of a breakdown. because you may have a limited skill within your team, and your schedule needs to automatically show that. It shouldn't be something that you have to try to figure out. So there's an element that I forgot to go over when I went over the schedule here. You'll notice that along this bar are different, this is a timeline related to these various sprints. I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to Epic View just so it's all calendar based. And this is a little clearer. These are the epics. And then these are the starts and finishes of the expected releases. So let's go to the release list. We can see that I have various releases here. So we just saw 2.1. It starts and it ends on January 5th. And if I go back, I can see November 17th. Here's the beginning of 2.1. So I can see my releases across the timeline. And if I have a problem related to the completion of that release, it'll automatically be red and show red. So there's some sort of staffing allocation that's going to or dependency that's going to cause this to be too late. But up here you can see the line is green. So something resolves itself in January. And again, we're going to look at more of what that means. But Portfolio has this idea of, oh, you're trying to get this done and you don't have enough resources on it by default. If I can see that it's going to take 6 extra weeks to do 2.1, and it's going to take 9 extra days to do 2.2, and I can see this here on the release report. So going back to the team view, another idea that is very possible here is you see this create virtual user. So what you can do is you can start doing some, again, like I mentioned before, some of that scenario planning where you can create a number of users that are potential hires, and you can begin to bring them into the process and say, okay, what would things look like if I expanded my team? Or you can also look if you have plans like we have here on this one where you have multiple teams. I'm going to go into the team view here, and you can see I have 3 teams. If I open this up, I can also start taking a look at what happens if I move people between teams. Or what if I have somebody that's shared across teams? I don't have any in this example. I'll have to fix that for Thursday. I can change their allocation of hours between the 2 different teams. And that again will impact the schedule because a particular team is associated with a particular issue. And then their stages and skills might be associated with that as well. So that's how you would, there are some very specific features that are related to these teams and related to completing and showing the interrelationship between teams. There's another important element here while I'm on this particular idea, and that is the idea of dependencies. So I'm going to go back to the scope view here, and if I click on this guy, I have this opportunity to add a dependency. Well, many of you have already figured out dependency is an issue link. It's the same feature that we're used to in JIRA. So this issue, we're going to say it blocks, just for expediency, NAM 3. And so we'll recalculate our schedule. And now you'll note that we have a new symbol at the top. So we can see here that NAM 9 is needed by, and we can see that represented here by this symbol at the end of this issue. And so we can start to see, and we can start to create these dependencies. Now the issue link visualization within Portfolio is limited to what I'm showing you here. If you had 25 links, you'd have a whole bunch of issues with this little colored bar at the end of them, and you'd have some with the colored bar at the beginning of them. And so you'd be able to see what these connections were. Most of our clients that we've worked with extensively have found this to not be acceptable. So we actually built an add-on called Visualizer that uses a force vector graph. And I'm not going to go through it here. This isn't a sales opportunity for that. What it does is it visualizes issue links, and it actually does it in a force vector graph so that you can see those direct dependencies in a different way. And that's meant to augment this view in Portfolio. So if you're interested, you can find it under the name Visualizer, and we'll be showing that a little bit more on Thursday as well. But here we've got, we've made a change, we've got a dependency, and we can see the impact of that dependency on our schedule. So if I go back to, if I go to releases, you'll notice that in this view, there is the opportunity to have cross-project releases. We have a number of customers that have literally hundreds of projects, some cases thousands of projects. And one of our customers, a very large manufacturer of networking hardware, and they have probably 250 products that share a particular piece of software. And so they have cross-project releases where they need to do testing across multiple projects for a particular piece of software. Well, those can be created and those can be managed here within Portfolio as well. And that again is a pretty powerful feature when you start looking at implementing JIRA at scale. If you have thousands of users working on hundreds of projects, you need to be able to see how those are connected, what those impacts are like when there's a change to the schedule, when issues fall behind, when you have dependencies between releases and across issues. Those are really important. And again, you can start to see those in this section here. But in this case, we've just got our particular project, and we have the releases related to that project. So we also have, I've been showing you kind of how you work with this related to teams. There are broader uses of Portfolio even within the same instance. So if you, for example, have an issue type hierarchy of epic, story, and task, it is not uncommon in a larger organization to have a couple of layers of issue type hierarchy above that. A common one we've seen a lot of is initiative. So there could be a corporate initiative. And so we've got a plan here that actually relates to the idea of initiative planning. Now I'll have created for Thursday the actual initiative issue type, but the idea here is that you've got a master set of major issues, and you can see the projects that they represent, and you can see a summary view. This gets really important when you're reporting up through a PMO to a C-suite or a set of management that really only care about the high level. They don't want to see the detail. And this kind of feeds an idea that we've built in with a lot of our customers, this idea of let's create this barrier, this boundary where below the barrier, the development teams are able to focus on their work, and they're not distracted by the concerns and the priorities and the questions coming from the executive team. This is not, and then we've got the executive team that is not looking at the low-level issues. Obviously, sometimes you have some that do, but you have this general focus on the broader, what is the scope? And then in the middle barrier, this is where you have the project manager or the project lead, and they update the fields and the issues and across the initiatives to get the proper information up. This can allow you to have that kind of management idea, and that is more waterfall in scope, which is kind of more natural to folks, more of a construction mindset. When's my start? When's my end? How far along am I? Versus the idea of agile, which is how do we continuously make progress? How do we iterate? How do we continue to improve? How do we continue to respond to the users, hit the high priority items, get new releases out? Those are very different ideas, and they can very much be in conflict, and Portfolio can be used as a tool to fix that by exposing the right data to management and the right data to your teams. Now, I want to hit on an idea here that I mentioned in my concepts. It's kind of the first one I started with, and that was themes. So we actually configure themes within the reports. So this is kind of the last oddball configuration area. So unfortunately, you can't configure your themes back through the other mechanisms, but I can. The idea is that operations, customer happiness, and marketing, and service and support. So we have probably we have built in now the idea of themes, and I mentioned earlier this can be like a corporate idea. So again, I can adjust my percentages just like I did earlier. I want my customer happiness to be 50% of our effort. And so you can see that there's this target idea. And this is the ideal that's set by the organization. These can be other corporate priorities or corporate ideas, or a particular organization's ideas if you have JIRA broken up by organization. And this will allow you to take and set a target for your teams. Now then we have the estimate associated with JIRA issues, and that'll be calculated automatically here based on the issues association with a particular theme. So let me go back to my scope view. And down here in the lower pane, I can change and show my themes on the screen. I can start assigning customer happiness, operations, marketing, operations, customer happiness. Let me hit these guys down here. So this is support and customer happiness. So now if I go back to my reports, you can start to see some of this other data flowing in. So I can see I obviously didn't go through and click off all of the hundreds of issues, but you can start to see the idea. We've got a target set of percentages, the actual based on estimate, the percentages based on estimate, and the percentages based on the actual work. So if our estimate is different than the actual effort that went into the issues, we can start to see that idea flow through the system. This again can be a pretty powerful idea associated with getting the organization focused in the right direction. So again, you can see up here, I want to remind you, all of the changes I just made within Portfolio are all just a suggestion at this point. They have not been committed back to JIRA. So this idea of being able to review and see my changes, and this is a right that you can give or take away from users. This is an important feature. It protects JIRA from a bunch of random changes and having things change underneath people. But it also gives you the ability to do more extensive edits to your issues from a sensible perspective. So I've got this project going on here where I'm looking at all these ideas and I'm making these changes. I'm making these changes in the context of my real schedule, in the context of my real schemes, of my teams, of the themes of the organization, and these are now reflected back in JIRA. So you can almost think of this as an extensive issue editor as well. Not sure what the holdup here is, but hopefully we'll get back to it shortly. So I'm trying to watch my time. I've got a few more minutes. You can also let's take a look at setting the issue type hierarchy. So if I go over here into the settings, and these are administrative settings. So I've got some permissions that I can give. There's a portfolio administrator, and this is implemented through the normal mechanism. You have portfolio users, the ability to view, edit, and create plans, the ability to browse and view in a read-only mode. This is the important, the inability to be able to commit changes back to JIRA. So you have a viewer that can look at these. Then there's new features that come along for labs, and then the ability to configure the shared teams, which you can actually pre-build your teams and share those across projects if you don't want to use automated teams that are generated based on the issues in a particular project being worked on by various people. So here I can see under portfolio hierarchy, here's my issue hierarchy. And I can create a new level. And I can add that. And now if I create another new level, I can reorder these if I want. And I can adjust my order. So, so I'm just doing these real quickly to be able to show you. So it's not allowing me to go down here. Yep. So this is not something that's fixed yet. I wanted to show this. These are epic, story, and subtask are built in agile issue types specifically for JIRA. There are some complexities around creating your own issue type hierarchy. And so it's really important to understand how this all works and begin to work with this and try it. And we'll be talking about this in more detail in our full class. And then there's also portfolio dependencies. I can add, right now, it's only pulled in that particular issue link type. There's all the others that are available here. You can also reverse it. If A blocks B, then A is scheduled before B. I can reverse that. There are some times when a particular link type, so specifically, not the blocks, but specifically relates to, so it'll matter the order in which you create the link can affect the scheduling. And there's a detailed, if you look at Atlassian's documentation, there is a detailed explanation of the scheduling algorithm used for portfolio. And that is updated on a regular basis because they do regularly change out that hierarchy. Change out that that algorithm and modify it in small ways, and sometimes in major ways between major releases. This will be, we'll actually be putting a recording of this session up on our YouTube channel. So if you want to refer a coworker to it, please feel free to do so. We'll also be holding these regularly. So if there's somebody that you want to get up to speed on portfolio, be great. And then also we've got a regularly scheduled class, public class for advanced portfolio that is happening this Thursday. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.